Hey Abhi, how are you?
Good, Anushika. How are you?
Great. It's so nice to see you again.
Likewise.
So thank you for coming online with me and chatting. I feel like we had such a great chat at Cyber Marketing Con in Austin in December, and I felt like some of the things we talked about, we should kind of dive into a little bit, at
hmm
least, and see. Let's kick right off, and I wanted to ask you about things that you learned in 2023 in collective before Cyber Marketing Con, and just things that you feel were really important to how you were shaped by the year,
hmm
and so things that you will be going forward doing for sure.
Yeah. Well, when I look back on the whole of 2023 and think about what really worked in the experiments that I tried out in terms of marketing, I think one area that has such it just becomes so routine when we did it for the first time. It was such a new thing. It was just good thought leadership, and what I mean by good
Mhm.
thought leadership is that a lot of companies or organizations, they're sitting on great proprietary data. It could be data about security. It could be data about how people are using their products. It's data that is unique to their company. It's data that nobody else has. And just mining that data will offer interesting insights, and people find that interesting rather than yet another blog about how to do X or how to do Y. This is unique. Nobody else can replicate it, and we've had great success with it, personally speaking. And that is something that I want to do more of going into 2024.
Any automation tips for finding the right data out of the heap that we generally as marketers tend to get?
I mean, it's not going to be a marketing conversation if we don't mention AI even once. I ChatGPT has been helpful to a degree where you do your initial brainstorm and then you're like, okay, I have these 5 or 6 ideas. I don't know, where to go from here. I'm just going to quickly plug my laptop in. I want to jump off stream. Uh,
That's all right.
right. This is the perks of doing it live. This is how
That's fine.
show
Yeah,
business is made.
absolutely.
Great. So I'll be like, yeah. So there's two automations. I think one in terms of mining data or doing the analysis. Uh, if you have ChatGPT Plus, and you can essentially just dump your CSV into it and then say, hey, this is data about this. I'm trying to mine insights. Why don't you give me some ideas on how this data can be cut and chopped up?
Hmm.
For every
Hmm.
5 ideas, there's probably one idea that's really good that you're like, okay, this is
Mhm.
interesting. I want to double click on this. So in terms of just generating the sheer number of ideas, I think
Mhm.
going through ChatGPT and looking for ideas on how to mine the data is beneficial. The
Mhm.
other way in which uh, automation has been beneficial is, I work in product marketing, and a lot of my job is to talk to different people to understand things, and then basically write it down in a manner that is persuasive and also clear. I've
Mhm.
realized one of the things I was doing was I would have these conversations with product managers that are technical or salespeople who are listening to insights or even customers and trying to understand, okay, what language are they using to talk about a
Mhm.
particular feature, use case, benefit. And, I was taking notes and then looking through 4 or 5 different documents to put together into a singular solution brief or data sheet or whatnot. Right now, all I do is just go into the Zoom calls, just record those Zoom calls, enable the
Mhm.
transcription feature on, and I just take these three transcripts and then throw it into ChatGPT and say, hey, I want you to write a solution brief with the following titles: intro
Mhm.
statement, problem, issues with current tools and approaches, solutions,
Mhm.
etc. And that has been really beneficial in just speeding up the amount of work. Obviously, nobody publishes that. The first draft is very raw, but the first draft, I've realized, depending on how you tweak the prompt, it's about 60% there. So the amount of time it takes
Okay.
to generate one of these things drastically
Mhm.
comes down. So that's also an automation that I will take into 2024.
Okay. Have you started developing your own, what I like to call a prompt library, and setting up something that you can keep honing in on and copying and pasting it, so that way it
Mhm.
uh, makes your whole workflow a lot easier?
I mean, I should be, but my prompt library right now is a Google document that only I'm able to decipher. I guess that's why I'm
Uh-huh.
going to retain my job. Anybody else that sees this prompt library is going to be like, "What is happening here?" I don't can't differentiate one prompt from the other.
Yeah.
But I think, to your point, if somebody does want to distinguish themselves going forward, a lot of the times people would bring in this tribal knowledge from the different organizations that they've been in. But this is obviously going to be a skill because it compounds, to your point. Once
Yeah.
you've gotten something to be fairly consistent, there's great value in it. I mean, there's marketplaces where you can buy and sell prompts.
Right,
So that
right, right.
itself shows the value of, perhaps having a prompt library that is unique to oneself.
Yeah. And the things that are like changing all the time, it's kind of fun that there's at least some things that you can kind of keep consistent and keep coming back to. But that's an interesting thing again with prompt libraries. I feel like whenever I've created a lot myself,
Mm-hmm.
and I've tried to automate as much as I could. Um, but it's funny because ChatGPT, like any other AI, it's evolving, right? And
Yeah.
it's learning more. And each time you give it a prompt, it's actually like I have seen an apples to apples comparison between
Mm-hmm.
months,
Mm-hmm.
and it's completely different. It's
Right.
completely different. Like the outputs you get, the quality.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, a lot of it has to do with the prompt.
Mm-hmm.
That's everything. But
Right.
even apart from that, like
Mhm.
it's crazy the rate at which it's evolving. I mean, it's
Yeah.
insane. Marketing
Have you
response will
found
be
out
this.
any tips or tricks in terms of just trying to get a consistent or a near consistent output?
That's the thing is we don't want consistency is the
Right.
point, right? Like you
Okay.
want, especially when it comes to like content creation or
Mm-hmm.
like you want it to be as human or humanistic as
Mm-hmm.
possible
Mm-hmm.
without it going off the valley of the crazy,
Right.
so you want it to be in that range where it's fun, it's different, it's new,
Mm-hmm.
and it's edgy even,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but you don't want it to be too far gone. You still wanted to have your brand values in your voice and all
Right.
of that. So I like that it's giving me a little bit of a variation. It kind of stays on top of things.
Mm-hmm.
I do think like one of the big areas that it will become very challenging going forward is AI driven SEO. That's one of
Right.
my like new challenge areas that I'm really looking forward to like diving into and
Mm-hmm.
researching and figuring
Mm-hmm.
out over the coming months. What about you? Are there things that you will absolutely like, be doing with AI going forward? Stuff that you will not be touching in 2024, or you
Mm-hmm.
just like waiting for it to see how things pan out?
Yeah, I think personally for me, I've just looked at my output recently and tried to
Hmm.
figure out, okay, how can I use AI either to not do as much as I'm doing and just pawn a lot of it to this machine that can do it, better and consistent and faster than me. Um,
Hmm.
so, and that just permeates to every single type of work that I do. Depending on the company, we saw this great demo of Google Doc to Google Slides.
Hmm.
I've seen a bit of that being offered by third-party companies, but I don't know when my organization will get into that broader beta program where we're allowed to do that. I think the moment I get that, I really want to nail that down. I think
Right.
a lot of the times when you start creating a sales pitch or a sales training on slides, you sort of lose the
Yeah.
narrative and it's just a bunch of disjointed statements in terms of, okay, this is important, this is important, this is important. There's really no focus on the transition. Whereas when you're writing a Word document, you can write the story. There's no
Right.
place for you to write, okay, here's the use cases, here's the target customers. No, there has to be some connection between the first sentence and the second sentence. And as a
Yeah.
consequence, I think we're all going to become better storytellers if we
Yeah.
start on a document and then take those to slides. The other thing that I really want to try with AI that I haven't tried so far is um, basically try, and I think this is perhaps possible with uh, the ChatGPT store that they have. Basically,
Hmm.
if you have a target persona, you figure out a prompt and you make it so standard where you can say, here's the website, go do it. Okay, you're a CISO of a Fortune 500 company. You're working on all of these big initiatives. I want your input. Spend 10 seconds on this and tell me what it is that you take away from this particular website or document or whatnot. I think that is going to
Yeah.
be incredibly powerful in terms of
Yeah.
message testing for lots of
Yeah.
companies. But that's one area that I'm eager to try that I haven't tried yet.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're right. There is something on the store for this. It depends on how much information you give it and how rich it is,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of the input data. But yeah, the whole, like how people try prompts,
Mm-hmm.
just starting the, for example, you have a new chat GPT window and you literally just start with like,
Yeah.
you're an expert in
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that doesn't work. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, giving it a nice little front ended
Mm-hmm.
push of information from, like, say a whole site or something like
Yeah.
that would absolutely work. Even specifics, honestly, I feel like sometimes it should be task based, because something that's driven on one specific task
Mm-hmm.
tends to give you a far better output than anything else, to the point where it takes like paramount importance. It becomes the very first thing, the task and format. But yeah, and then when we last met at Cyber Marketing Con, I think you and I were coming out of, what was it, Tom's talk,
Yeah.
and we were a little lightheaded trying to figure out, like, just wrap our head around all the things that we will be doing in
Mm-hmm.
2024.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to go into what you loved most, what
Yeah.
you're looking forward to?
I think Tom Orbach's talk was really interesting, primarily because he's taken two things that normally people will tell you don't go together, shouldn't go
Mhm.
together, because
Mhm.
one of the things that people, when they hear the word cybersecurity, is that they think, oh, it's a very serious industry, and it's security, right? How can you?
Yeah.
And what Tom did was he took humor. It, cybersecurity industry is largely serious. You look at every single website. There's a certain color
Yeah.
palette. Everybody uses similar colors, similar way, tone. Um, so the same way of talking or presenting content. That his team has been trying to take humor and
Mhm.
then try to bring that to the cybersecurity industry. And he basically just showcased when it works well, it can work really well. And some of it is just
Yeah.
small things on social media that they were trying to get their target audience to engage with their content. Like end of the day, all they wanted was out of this campaign, we're going to get people to know that there's a company called X that does Y.
Mhm.
That is all. I'm not going to tell
Right.
them about a feature. I'm not going to tell them about what problems we solve. We're a very early small startup, not an early, mid-stage startup. Not many people know about us, but I want them to know that there's this company and this is what they do. Maybe it's like three lines, right? It's almost a branding play, and the fact that they'd used humor and the different campaigns that he had run. I like the one thing where they said, uh, I don't recall it exactly right now, but it was something to the effect of, you know, we'll give you a free sweater or something, a ugly Christmas sweater, right? Just comment here and we'll give you a free sweater. And so when people were like, wait, no address, nothing, just want to comment us, and they would comment, and all they did was basically took their photo, photoshopped their face on somebody else wearing an ugly sweater, and they said, here's an ugly sweater. It was silly, it was funny, and it was end of the year, it was lighthearted, but a lot of people engaged in it, and I was like, wow, that's interesting, right? And now
Yeah.
everybody in their network on LinkedIn has now seen this little campaign, and they know that here's a company that does this. So I thought that was super clever.
Yeah. No, that's the thing also with, like, B2B marketing, people tend to forget that
Mhm.
the people on the other side are
Yeah,
still people.
yeah,
I mean, it's not
yeah,
that there's an entire company sitting together trying to
mhm,
decide,
yeah,
whether to engage with you or not. They're still like, and in fact, it was, I think, in the same conference that they actually gave this report where there's only about 2 to 5 people that are ever on the buyer panel. It's
yeah,
literally just 2 to 5 people. That's it.
mhm,
So yeah, I mean, humor, right? I mean,
yeah, and
not a lot
like
of it in the industry,
exactly,
though.
like I think the B2C industry, there's lots of examples. Like end of the day, people are people, and even to your point, in B2B, we're people. We're not selling to robots. It'll be
Exactly.
interesting to see, like Geico is this, their whole brand is insurance and humor, two things that should not go together at all. But
Yeah.
for a long time, they started producing a series of ads that just focus on humor. And
Yeah.
everybody knows that Geico ads, oh, it'll be clever, it'll be witty. I'm going to stick through this ad, even if I never.
Uh-huh.
I know Geico, like I have nothing from
Yeah.
them, but I know there's this company called Geico. They have a lizard and they do insurance. I It'll be interesting to see some company take that approach where they say, listen, everybody else in our industry is very serious. We're going to take our product seriously, but our marketing, we're going to approach with humor. Uh,
Right.
that would be really interesting because Webflow was a company that I saw in like 2022, 21. I don't know, whenever I started
Yeah.
using their product.
Yeah.
again, their marketing was pretty straightforward. But if you went to their university where they taught you how to use
The
products,
guide. Yeah.
ridiculously rare. I forget his name. He's now starting to do something in the education space and fantastic. But the whole thing was
Right.
this, you know, almost sarcastic deadpan humor that
Yeah.
you would not expect it. You're trying to figure out how to center this box, but you
Yeah.
enjoyed that process. Previously, you would get frustrated. You would have someone doing the
Yeah.
tutorial saying, "All right, next you take this box, you click this icon," but they made it so funny. And
So fun.
I
Yeah.
remember seeing tweets from people saying, people ask me what is my preferred brand of humor, and in brackets it would say me who likes the Webflow customer success videos, and they
Yeah.
would say it's complicated. I don't quite know how to explain it, but
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
this company trying to teach you how to use a product, but it's just hilarious. I'd like
Yeah.
to see
No,
more companies try that.
yeah, I exactly understand what you mean because I think Webflow was one of my first ever experiences with something that should have been very stick in the butt corporate, but it's actually very, very fun and
Mhm,
nice to use. And it's actually like the only possible guide or tutorial set
mhm.
that's like fun to go through, right?
Yeah,
Like, yeah, I
yeah,
get what you're saying.
yeah. I mean, think
Yeah,
about it. The
no,
product
that's
is
that's
so.
like
Sorry, go ahead. The product is so
no, no,
complex
no,
that you
sorry.
have to go through a course to learn how to
Yeah,
use it. Like that would be a huge blocker, right? People are like, oh, I don't want to engage with this. Like, I want to use this, but I have to go through a course. That's silly. And then they said, okay, we're just going to make it entertaining and engaging. And you're like, wait, before you know it, you watched 20 videos and you know how to use the
yeah,
product.
exactly.
And you're not going to switch now, right?
Yeah,
It's an interesting way of addressing that. I don't know how much of this was planned, but if it was planned, kudos to them. That was a fantastic idea.
yeah. No, that was great. Tom actually reached out a couple days after he was in my AI powered marketing class, and then he reached out and he said, "Dude, we're writing this mega prompt,
Mm-hmm.
which is fantastic." So they've actually automated a lot of the prompting, but again, the humor and all of that
Mm-hmm.
has to come from the geniuses that Wiz, the people that he works with. They're a fabulous team. So yeah, no,
Now, I
he
wanted to get
actually
your
used the phrase mega prompt, which I've never seen
mega
before.
prompt. It'll be interesting because I went down the route of the so trying to generate a particular asset at work, and I had this 1 page long prompt, right, with all the
Yeah,
best practice and everything else. And the first time I ran it, it was wonderful. It gave me exactly what I want. I was like, okay, fantastic. This normally takes 4 to 5 weeks of a bunch of people writing this. Now we can
yeah,
just do it with one prompt. I ran it the next day, and it was complete nonsense. And I was like, oh, so this whole I don't know. I'm not technical enough. I've heard that if you use LangChain and if you're able to, you know, take the output of first prompt and then feed it into the next prompt, it's probably better. But I don't know. Like given the pace at which AI is moving, and maybe I don't know enough about LangChain, but I feel like that's an intermittent problem. Maybe it's a problem for 3 to 6 months, and they'll come out with something new, and you're like,
yeah,
oh, by the way, LangChain, yeah, you can use you know regular prompting and say take the output of this and then put it into this next prompt, right? So
yeah.
yeah, I think
Actually, if you're having trouble with that, what I've seen works really
Mhm,
well is, yeah, one way would be iterative prompting. So that is
mhm.
the LangChain system. But you can also actually give it a chance to write the prompt for you. It
Right.
actually works a lot better and tends
Yeah.
to give you much more consistent results. Again, it requires a little bit of like knowing how to format it and what comes before what and
Yeah.
all of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's it does give you a really good result at the end of all that. Otherwise, yeah, you're going to get one of those situations where you say the salmon in the river, for example, for like a generative image,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's literal cuts of salmon in water. So
Yeah.
it's you wanna,
I've seen that
yeah,
meme. It's hilarious.
yeah. So it's those things tend to happen. So yeah, it's all about the prompt and like refining it and all of that.
Yeah. Speaking of Tom's at Cyber Marketing Society's conference, the other Tom, right? Tom Wentworth from Recorded Future. Uh,
Wentworth, yeah,
yeah. The whole idea of why you need to build a brand in B2B and some of the lessons that he's learned from not building a brand and eventually building a brand in the output. I think that was incredibly inspiring. Just the
mm-hmm.
scale at which they had done it, the fact that they have built,
Yeah,
many companies talk about building a media company for their distribution, but they've actually built it, right? They like their
yeah,
news organization has like 1 million views a month. I was curious, right? I was thinking about it a lot after the conference too, and I was wondering, is building a brand in B2B all that useful? And then the reason I am thinking about that, of course, Tom obviously has a session saying it is useful, is branding traditionally, like I bought this textbook on branding and I was reading it, and every single example in there is about commodity products. You're selling soaps, you're selling shoes, clothes, where really there's no competitive moat, right? Everybody else can make a running shoe. That's where you try to build a
Mhm.
brand where you make the shoe stand for something, or you make the words mean something, and somebody will
Mhm.
buy your product versus somebody else's. Now in tech, most products that reach a certain level of maturity perhaps do the same thing, right? So you can make the argument that in tech too, at a certain point, every single software is a commodity, and therefore you need to build a brand. But nobody goes out and says, oh, we use XYZ. There's no social capital that you gain from using a particular software versus another software, right?
Right.
uh, so I wonder, like, this is an open question, like, is there a value in building a brand in tech? More like your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So I think the simple thing is, yeah, I'm a big believer that people buy from people and not from companies,
Mm-hmm.
not from brands. But I think it has its place because
Mm-hmm.
the people, the way things churn,
Mm-hmm.
even superstars tend to exit
Yeah.
companies, tend to leave, and then you want that brand capital to be retained.
Right.
So yeah, from that perspective, I would absolutely invest in time, effort, resources on the brand building. And
Right.
I've not seen it ever like really fail. At least, in this industry, in
Mm-hmm.
cybersecurity, I've not seen it really fail, right? Like, because we've seen those insanely high exits. We've
Mm-hmm.
seen that kind of thing happen a lot.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I don't know how much of that is like having a brand. Like, again, this is a thesis that I have. It's not fully built out. Maybe through this conversation I'll realize I'm wrong. But a lot of the companies that have become established brands, um,
Hmm.
I don't talk about Apple at all. I think once you say Apple, I think the whole thing falls down, and everybody has an opinion. So basically, anybody listening to this, if anybody asks people what's a good example of marketing, and someone says Apple, then that's a lazy answer. You should ask them for some other
Yeah.
company. But every
Yeah.
other thing, right? Especially in B2B software, when I think about it, when I think about certain categories and I think about certain category leaders, it's almost like most people get to know them once they become big, and that makes them a
Hmm.
brand. It's
Hmm.
not things they did on their way to becoming that.
Hmm.
So it's it's almost like, oh, we became a big company, and so now we have a nice polished website. And this is what people think when you say brand. Oh, it's a nice website, it's a nice logo, it's a standardized
Yeah.
collateral. But I don't I want to see a Series A company that's a brand, that somebody looks at it and says, oh, this is what they do, and they become really big. I think one company that I followed for a while was this company called Superhuman. Basically, they have this
Of course.
inbox. Most
Yeah.
VCs love them, and I'm pretty sure they're competitors to Superhuman. But the amount of press, the amount of goodwill that Superhuman has generated, and the fact that they've been in conversation all the time, like, they're a brand.
Hmm.
I'm pretty sure
Hmm.
whatever they're doing, it's easy to replicate. Somebody else can do it and offer it at like half the price.
Hmm.
But they don't have the brand value. Like, I can go and tell people, oh, I use Superhuman. First of all, people should be asking you, wait, you pay for an email client? Like, what is this, the 1980s? Like, I don't understand. What do you mean you pay for email? Like, be normal and use Gmail like everybody else. But there's some social value coming from you telling people that I'm paying, hundreds of dollars for this email client. I'm so important,
Yeah.
and my time is so valuable that I can't be bothered to use, the normie tech that is Gmail or Outlook or whatever tool that is. But I don't know if it's similar to saying, "Oh, we use Jira." Like I
No,
don't.
I don't think I've ever heard that.
I'm pretty sure people will say that Jira is a great brand. It's amazing, yada yada
Yeah.
yada. But there's no social value from me telling people that
Yeah. There's no
I use Jira.
cloud. Yeah.
Exactly. There's no clout, as
Yeah.
the kids would say. Uh, so I don't quite know.
I don't think kids are saying that anymore, Abhi. We are getting older.
I don't know if there is. I don't know. This is still an open question in terms of, one, should you build a brand in tech? And the answer is obviously yes, because if you subscribe to the thesis that most tech products are commodities, okay, great, you can build a differentiation with a brand. And two, if brand's purpose is social, but most people don't talk about their accounting software that they use, right?
Yeah.
It,
The brand
or
purpose would
maybe
be
that's
recall.
sorry, recall. Yeah,
The
yeah,
brand purpose would be recall. I
yeah.
don't even think it's not even clout. It's not. I think it's recall. It's a feeling of safety, especially when
Mhm.
I've seen this a lot with security training, right? There
Yeah,
are
yeah,
like people who go after security training with the same companies for like 3 years and they
yeah,
absolutely hate it. They hate it. And they still keep
yeah.
purchasing from the same companies because it's just what they feel is safe.
Yeah,
It's not
it's
really.
well known. And how much of that do you think is just the company being really big? Like I can know there's a company that I know in marketing that
I'm
does
sure it
training
factors in.
that everybody hates, but everybody
Yeah.
would send their new employees to get that training done,
Yeah,
purely
yes.
because they're like, everybody knows this, right?
Yeah.
Yes, you bleed from your eyes when you sit through that training for the entire day, but you're like, it's just one of those things that people do, which is an opportunity
Yeah.
for somebody to build a challenger brand, if anybody's
Mm,
listening. But
mm.
isn't there this old saying, nobody got fired for buying IBM, right?
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
so
That's
like
good.
that's the
Yeah,
brand. But when did
that's the brand.
IBM become a brand? Like, how do you measure that? That is, I think that's a curiosity for me, uh, at least for the first part of 2024, where I'm trying to look at how are people building brands. And the other thing is there's great examples of people doing this in the
Hmm.
B2C world.
Hmm.
There's like there's a shoe company here that sells what $300 running shoes, and I'm like,
Right,
why are you starting a shoe company when Nike or Under Armour exists? Like, how are you going to compete then?
right.
But they said,
Yeah,
okay, we are only for runners. We're not for anybody else. Anybody else can buy us. But when all the cool kids
yeah,
and all the runners started buying these shoes, they could signal to somebody else, I'm a runner and I care about fitness. I care about my health. Other people were like, okay, interesting. I want to buy these shoes now, right? It's well known. And they were spending $300 to buy those shoes. Uh, I've not seen a good example of something like that in software where it's like, oh, I don't know if it'll be ever cool to use a certain piece of software. I don't know how I'm thinking about
yeah.
this. What are you thinking about? In
I
terms
think
of
those are very,
a brand
very
and B2B
different.
context. Yeah.
Yeah, so those are very different brand recall issues. So
Right.
when it comes to software, it's always about solving a specific issue, or
Yeah.
it's like, either you're saving someone time or you're making the money, or it
Mhm.
has to have an end game. So it maybe can be about cloud. It would take a
Right.
little time and maybe a little smarts to build it out. But when it comes to like the kind of marketing you're talking about with that specific shoe, I think it's a lot about knowing your target
Yeah.
persona, the
Mhm.
customer really, really well,
Mhm.
understanding how the fashion trends are
Mhm.
constantly changing and constantly moving. I don't think
Right.
it's the same with software IT. In fact, I think we have the opposite problem. It's people being too stuck in their ways
Right.
and not wanting to move
Yeah.
from things.
Yeah. I
And then
mean,
there's these huge lumbering organizations that have to like pull so many tendrils literally out of the soil, so to speak, in
mhm.
order to like, in order to take on something else in their stack.
Mhm.
It's hard. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I don't know. I'd like to. I went for one online branding course recently. It was great. It was by Prof. Scott Galloway. Um, it's exceptional for B2C, good B2C examples. B2B, I'm not convinced. I've not seen anybody come. I mean, and that's also an opportunity for somebody to come in and say, hey, we're going to build a B2B, I don't know, branding
There's
consultancy or
definitely
whatever,
a
right?
little space there. Yeah.
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 And I think a lot of this is also because just the consumerization of B2B products. Previously, you go into
Yeah.
work, they had softwares to use. We'd all have
Yeah.
training. I remember my first job where we had like a 2 week training on how to use software that somebody had built
Mhm.
specific to another company I was working at, and we all wanted to kill ourselves because the software was just so horribly bad.
Right.
And right now, there's a lot of software because of their whole product-led growth motion. They're very
Mm.
intuitive to use.
Mm.
If it's Slack, okay, I download it. Oh, now I know how to use it. Right, 5-10 minutes, and the rest of it is super
Yep.
intuitive for me to use. And if you think about it, it's a B2B technically, but for B2B companies, right?
Right.
If that continues to happen and the fact the switching costs are relatively low, maybe there is an even more case to be made for saying, hey, we use Slack.
Yeah.
And I think it exists. As I say this, I'm thinking about it. I'm saying, there's people that will
It does.
say,
Onboarding.
like,
Yeah.
especially people who are graduating college now, they'll be like, if a company uses Microsoft, I am not going to that company. I want to use the Google Suite, right? I have the Gmail is very intuitive, Docs is great and easy to share,
Right.
it's great to collaborate.
Right.
And and maybe it's just a tech thing. If you go into the finance industry, they will probably say, if
Yeah.
you use Google Suite, I will kill you. The amount of things I can do in PowerPoint or Excel is not even 10% of what Google has to offer. So maybe there is,
Yeah. Yeah.
some
No,
sort of
actually, I've been seeing
utilitarian.
that already, like people get scared when you send them spreadsheets. Even,
Oh
I
yeah,
mean, you can see that already. They're like so tired of it. Like, just seeing the grid freaks them out.
you're like, what is
So I
this?
think
Like,
it's like,
where's my
you have to
link? Why is there a file? Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So you have to recharge the system. It has to be something nicer, like a pretty looking form or something
mhm,
that, it has to be something
yeah,
nicer.
yeah.
Even
And I think.
internally, I found that, like, sales doesn't really like seeing spreadsheets. So now
Mhm.
I'm trying to trick them by sending them forms.
it's just different packaging, and that's what we do as marketers,
Yeah,
right?
but it feeds into the same spreadsheet.
Right. The front end is different. It's like I remember
Yeah.
recently with Adobe trying to buy Figma, right? Adobe has this great brand, uh, and Figma, like a lot of smaller companies or new age designers or people who go
Mm.
into design, they have a certain sense of taste and they want to use tools that have a certain sense of taste. And so I think Figma did that really well. They do have a brand
Mm.
language, and so
Yeah,
when
yeah.
Adobe decided to buy Figma, I remember uh, lots of just people crying on Twitter saying, "No, you will ruin it. I don't want to use the
Yeah.
Adobe interface and whatnot. It's horrible." And there's obviously people who love Adobe, and they're like, "Listen, this is
Yeah.
like a power tool. Figma is great,
Mhm.
but there's certain things that you can't do there. It's for different sides of the company or whatever." But just the way it feels, right? And I think again, I'm spiraling here, but I will end this whole brand. What do you say? Crisis of conscience that I'm having about brand with this last thing. Steve Jobs has this great saying about quality, right? He says quality is not something you can message or you can position your way through. It's something that people
Mhm.
feel. And he talks about
Mm.
how Japanese products back in the day, they never advertised quality because it's not something you can sell on. People have to feel it. And I think perhaps
Yeah.
brand is also something like that, but there is a way to engineer that feeling. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think if somebody is able to do that on a consistent basis, uh,
Yeah.
it'd be really
No, it's
interesting.
at the end of the day, it's always about falling in love with your customers' problems. So it's
Yeah,
one of those things where people do never buy the shovel; they buy the hole it digs.
yeah.
So it's the problem constant, and like, see, that was one of the things that I loved about your talk in that
Mhm.
conference, and stuff that we have implemented already is battle cards on the
Mhm.
homepage. I
Nice.
love that idea. That was so,
Right.
I was like, why didn't I think of that, damn it. So yeah, no, that was so good. And I was like, yeah, why aren't we like, and then the where I'm forgetting the exact phrase you used, but you said like, your clients are going to have issues with,
Mhm.
oh, why don't we go with that person, why don't we go with this
Objection
company.
handling. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Objection handling, yes, that
Yeah.
was the phrase. Yeah, so handle those right off the bat and put their objections right there for them
Mhm.
to see even before they can think of it,
Yeah.
and then address the objection right off the bat. That
Mhm.
was really good as well. And then I also really love the whole quadrant, right?
Mm.
um,
Yeah, yeah.
like, yeah, if you don't have one, make one. That was so good. I mean, all of those were fabulous. I was like taking screenshots, sending it to my team, and we were like building it out on the fly while we were literally sitting in your talk. It was fabulous.
No, that's awesome, and thank you for sharing that. I feel great about giving a talk at that
Yeah.
conference right now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You should do more of those. It's totally your thing.
It's also interesting. None of these ideas are mine. Well, the quadrant idea I'll take some credit for, but the rest of it, I just saw other companies do it. And one thing I'm realizing is yes that, and this is another thing I've been thinking about 2024 in general is if you go back to mid-century, right, right after the Second World War, when there was a fair amount of abundance, there's all this capacity built for manufacturing and everything else, and people are trying to figure, okay, how do we sell more product? Golden age of advertising, the 60s and the 70s. There are so many ads from that period that are still
Yeah.
timeless, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
and in tech, all you have to do is just take a lot of those ads and then run with it, just repurpose them. You just steal them, right? And there's no, I don't know if there's any IP protection, but some of those ads are just fantastic. And I'm like, it's again, it goes back to positioning. It goes back to um, branding. There's an ad that I saw that I remember very vividly right now. It says, it basically, it was a Porsche. I think it was Porsche somewhere, and there was this race, right? I think it was the Le Mans endurance sports car race, and you can submit as many teams as you want. And so the results of the race was announced, right? And it was first place Porsche, second place Porsche, third place Porsche, fourth place Porsche. Like eighth place was someone outside of Porsche, but the top 9 positions were Porsche. And they basically said, nobody's perfect. But essentially they're saying that, out of the top 10 places in this race that is super boring, we won a 9.
That's close to perfect as it gets.
Exactly. All of these these ratings and rankings and leadership positions that all of these third-party analysts produce, sometimes company would say, oh yeah, we won it 3 times, we won it 4 times. But the visualization of that, they could just do that, right? They could say, okay,
absolutely.
My product, Gartner MQ, 2021 leader, 2022 leader, 2023 leader, something. I'm just thinking, if they're leader 10 times, they could just put that in and then say, nobody's perfect, but we're not nobody's. Right. And then you could say, we won it 10 times. I just know the amount of time that is spent on the visual side of communicating value in B2B marketing,
right?
I think there's a huge opportunity there. One company that has done it fairly well, at least in San Francisco when you're walking around, is this company called Coda. They're an alternative to Google Docs. Former Google Docs guy is building it now. And so it's a spreadsheet, right? They're trying to build different types of spreadsheet. And you see them on the buses with these great ads saying, enough of this sheet. And then smash their face in an Excel sheet. And I'm like, okay, that's arresting. And it's about Google Sheets and this company called Coda. Understood. And I want to know more about it. But I'd like to see more of that from other companies, because there's a huge opportunity to be memorable. Like I'm talking about it. I was just, walking in the street. I don't know. Maybe, 10 years we'll have, when we've used the lead form of advertising, when we've used all the existing tech that we've been having for the last 10 years, and we realize that, okay, everybody's using it. We're not really getting results. Maybe that is when, it's time for a revolution to rethink.
Let's see how things go. And then with, we can do really cool stuff with Sora and all of that. So let's see how things pan out. In the coming months should be very interesting.
I think 2024 will be super interesting.
So maybe your next talk should be about integrating all of that into the websites.
I wish. I'll see what what I could do.
February, you have like 10 months.
Well, I don't know. Maybe I should just do one on creatives in B2B. We did this internally recently, where we looked at a bunch of our competitors, and we're looking at our ads across different things, and we're like, listen, there's just an opportunity here. Nobody's seeing this, but just a very clear opportunity. And you'll see this if you go to RSA and you walk around the booth, just block out the logo, and you're like, I have no idea what company this is. But every company seems to be doing the same thing, right? They're messaging the same, they're solving the same problems, and that's not something you're going to change. But why should I go with your company versus another company? That can be changed. And you don't, I think the one-way companies trying to do that right now is, okay, we're going to do it in green color, we're going to do it in purple color, but I think there's just a completely different way of doing it. And so it'll be, I don't know. And I'd like to see some company take that on and try it.
I've seen, you're absolutely right. I've seen the same thing with Black Hat. It's overwhelming. And nobody's really saying, everybody's saying the same things and really loudly, and then nobody's saying anything, basically.
Everybody's tuning out, right? I remember that this used to happen at one of the conferences that I used to go to, but a great example of something like this is it's just PR stunts. I feel like companies don't pull PR stunts anymore. I think there's a lot of value to pull a PR stunt, especially if you are a mid-sized company. I remember reading this example about how PayPal used to have their massive user conference. There was a competitor of PayPal at that point. They're out of business now. I don't know if they're out of business or if they're just a smaller company. But they decided to advertise themselves at PayPal's user conference to try to steal away some of their traffic. And
Uh-huh.
one of the problems that existed at that point apparently was that PayPal used to freeze people's accounts when the documentation wasn't that clear. They're like, oh, we're not sure if it's fraud, so we're gonna freeze your account for a while until we figure this out. If you're a small business owner, that's pretty big problem because your money is stuck, right? You can't like go get financing from elsewhere. If you're a big company, it's not a big problem. So this company, they took, I don't know, 100 pounds, 300 pounds of ice, and they got these dollar bills, and they literally froze that in that ice and put it in front of the conference and said, PayPal freezes your accounts. Every single
That's
tech
okay.
publication was, yeah, every single tech publication was talking about it. People at the conference was like,
That's
what the hell
okay.
is this? Why is there a random
Yeah.
ice in front of this? And then
Yeah.
maybe they moved it after a couple of hours, but it created
Yeah.
enough of a moment that people were talking about it and understood that there's an alternative to PayPal that does not freeze account. If I'm somebody whose account has been frozen, I'm going to be like, well,
Yeah.
it's fine now, but the next time this happens, it's probably not ideal. So, let me go talk to these
Yeah.
people. Like, I'd like to see a bit more
Um,
of that, genius.
so there's this one thing where, I mean, outside of physical events, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
where you're attending, there are these stunts, like CGI driven stunts
Mm,
that people are doing. For example, there was this viral Maybelline ad
right,
went crazy. It was
right.
all over Insta, Twitter,
Yeah.
and everything, right? And it was basically this subway, a train pulling
Mm.
into a station, and the top of the front of the train had a ginormous eyelash on it, and there was a huge mascara wand above it.
Wow.
And then as the train pulled in, it was like the mascara wand would like
Right,
swivel. It was phenomenal.
right.
And it went crazy. People were like, look at how, and you know how, social media just goes haywire.
Yeah.
Nobody's really like looking at the
Mhm,
subtext. Everybody's
mhm.
just like looking at the headlines.
Yeah.
And then people started really sharing it, and it was crazy, and it became a viral sensation. And the cool thing is, there was not a single city permit taken for any of this. There wasn't the actual stunt being set up. There were
Oh,
no
wow.
subway cars actually being used, and it
Right.
was entirely built out in CGI,
Yeah.
in AI. But it got the same push, the same PR, the
Yeah.
same views,
Yeah.
possibly more,
Yeah.
because it seemed like it was filmed by a random person
Yeah.
on,
Oh,
yeah.
oh, yeah. I have this whole you know thing that I'm noodling on. It's just everybody has gotten so good at spotting ads that we just instinctively tune out, right?
Yeah.
Especially when we're doing infinite scrolls, we're like, yeah, I know what a post is, I know what an ad is, I'm just going to scroll.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
As I hate to admit this, but I've spent some time on TikTok. But one of the things people do really, really well on TikTok is they make ads not look like ads,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
right? And like, traditionally we wanted high production values. If you're trying to show a website, right, you would do a nice little screen recording and then show a demo. I've seen products, AI products, being
Yeah.
sold on using TikTok, where that person is people literally they're just taking their phone and they're using their phone to record the browser on their screen by typing out the URL. It's
Oh, okay.
super low tech, and it's almost like like people are doing. I saw this one skit where it was like, hey, I was trying to submit my assignment, but I hadn't done my essay. There's only 2 hours left. I was panicking. I didn't know what to
Mm-hmm.
do. Oh, there's this tool called something AI, and so she picks up her phone, right, and she's recording this from obviously another phone, and this whole thing is an
Yeah.
ad, but you don't realize it until the end when she uses her phone, puts it on her computer, and then you see her typing out the product's name. But by the time you're already hooked, you watch the ad for about 30
Yeah.
seconds. The algorithm knows that, oh, you're interested in content like this, and they can surface more ads or just, more skits of people using the product. And by the end, you're like, oh, wait, this is an ad? I just sat through an entire ad, but I
An
also
entire
learned what it
one.
was. I don't know. I think we're going to see a lot more of that
Yeah.
in B2C. Again, I feel like B2C is always at the cutting edge, right? There's so many products that are always fighting to stand out. They have to
Yeah.
try new and interesting things. But in B2B, there's an opportunity for
Yeah.
somebody who just copies the B2C playbook.
Yeah. And in playing in arenas that have never been played before,
Yeah.
like some of the brands have done this so well. Like
Mhm.
two of the ones, two of the brands that I've seen lately that my daughter has suddenly started talking about
Mhm.
is Gucci.
Okay.
And yeah, it's the strangest thing. So
Mhm.
she was basically on YouTube Kids,
Mhm.
and they have this video where they have a couple of child influencers running running inside a Gucci store, just
Right.
like, oh my god, mom, look, that's so cute. Oh my god, mom, look.
Right.
So now So now there's like,
I mean, basically, they're using your
I don't know what
kids
to do with that.
to
Yeah.
influence
And
you
my
to buy
daughter's just like,
Gucci bag. Incredible! Wow. Okay.
yeah, they're getting kids
Yeah.
to socially pressure their parents from inside their homes. I mean, it's amazing. And then and then there's Starbucks, which is now my daughter's favorite restaurant to go to, because she thinks that, because she saw a couple of child
Mhm.
YouTube influencers having
Mhm.
the greatest time at Starbucks, just like, oh my
Mhm.
god. And all they did was just go up to a counter and order strawberry milkshakes.
Mhm.
And then she's just like, oh, you can do this, you can do
Yeah.
that. And it's, I mean, those guys know their people
Yeah.
well. They know
Yeah.
their customer well.
I mean, I'd like
Yeah.
to see that in B2B, and hopefully,
Yeah,
I do think maybe
absolutely.
we're like a year away from B2B ads not looking like B2B ads.
Yeah, it will be interesting.
Indeed.
So let's say, hopefully, we should be able to implement some of this. Look at us. We said we'll chat for like 20 minutes. It's 45 minutes. It's
Indeed.
like one of us doesn't have kids almost.
I don't have kids, so I get to chat for 5 minutes on a LinkedIn
It's like
live
you have
in the end
freedoms
of
and
the
stuff.
day. Indeed, indeed.
All right. Thank you very much. And let's do this again. It was so fun. And hopefully, a few months from now, we should do like a catch up of like all the stuff we talked about and see if we've been able to actually do it.
Yeah,
It'll be fun.
absolutely, Anushka. It was great talking to you as well, and great connecting again after the conference.
All right.
Yeah,
Thank
take care.
you. See you.
Bye.
Bye bye.